Hello and welcome to Credible Talk. I'm Aarica Mims.
And I'm Eric Hage. This is the podcast where we get to talk about all things commercial real estate and a lot more.
And if you've ever tuned into Credible Talk, we hope you've, tuned in a few times. You know that we talk about a little more than just commercial real estate, maybe a lot more than commercial real estate sometimes, and it's food.
So there's nothing more fascinating, at least to myself, than talking about the business of food. We all know how much I love food. And so this topic is near and dear to my heart. More specifically, the dining experience and how it all relates to what we do. Joining us today is Mark Brezinski. Mark is an entrepreneur. He is an icon in the restaurant industry. And now Mark is the proud author of a new book called ForkFight. I actually came across a review of his book in the Dallas Morning News not long ago and saw that it got great reviews. By the way, Simon & Schuster calls it, quote, the most compelling, insightful, and white-knuckled journey behind the restaurant curtain since Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. With that, welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Eric and Eric. I'm pleased to be here and excited to talk about the book and all things restaurant business and Dallas in particular, because that's where we are. The book is a little bit more of an international kind of journey, but certainly I'd say a good 50 to 70% of it is based on things that have happened here in the Dallas market.
You know, it is a fascinating read, and Eric literally came to the office one day and was like, I just read the best book. And when it had to do with food, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then I read it, and it is so interesting.
You mean you listened to it?
Actually,
because you don't read anything.
I did listen to it on Audible, and Mark actually narrated the Audible. So I feel like we are close friends now because I've heard your voice a lot.
There you go.
But the book, talks about what has to happen before even that first dish is served in a restaurant, which the majority of people don't even think about. And there's so much that goes into the concepts. And it's also based on your lifetime of experience. And I guarantee anyone who is listening here has been in one of your restaurants or 5 of them, because the list is long. Your book is celebrated for its honesty, and that begins at the beginning of your story. The restaurant industry wasn't the initial career you sought out. How did you end up in the restaurant industry?
I want to be a writer. I wrote all the way through high school. I wrote poetry. I wrote for the school newspaper. I felt like journalism was going to be my calling. My dad, however, he makes old school seem like new school Montessori. He was ancient school. He was like, no son of mine is going to go to college to learn how to be a writer. He says, you don't need to go to school to do that. He said, if I'm going to pay for your education, you're going to study business. So if I was going to go to college and he was going to pay, which I needed, I studied business. But I kept writing in the forefront. I wrote for my college newspaper. I wrote for the local Ithaca Journal up in Ithaca, New York, a sports column on sports. I played sports in college. So I kept dabbling in writing, but it became clear to me that if I wasn't going to focus on writing, I better choose something else. And it certainly wasn't the business that my dad wanted to be in, which was a healthcare business. And in my family, I had 2 other brothers go to Cornell University at the hotel and restaurant school there at Cornell. And we've always been a family that traveled a lot and ate out a lot. And I just finally said, okay, maybe that's what I should do, is I should be in the restaurant, hotel, hospitality business. I applied to Cornell to get into their graduate program after I completed my undergraduate degree because it was another business program. My dad kind of blessed it and said, okay, let's get you that degree and see what you can do with it. So that's how it happened. I just realized that writing was not going to be my profession. It could be my interest, it could be my passion, but not my profession.
Well, it's come full circle, right? So
yes,
you initially wanted to be a writer, then you were in a different career for years, and you turned those experience into a book and within ForkFight. So that's interesting how everything just kind of happens that way.
So there is such a great story in the ForkFight book that you wrote. When people think about restaurants, they think about the food, of course, the vibe of the environment, the experience altogether. There's not a lot of thought that goes into how that all happened in the first place. How did that concept get developed? And that's where you found your success, correct?
Right.
in this remarkable ability to take something from a concept to a brick and mortar, that's unique. But in your book, you also talk about your failures.
Yeah.
Why did you think that that was important to discuss in your book?
Well, if you're going to be honest and you're going to tell real stories, not all those stories are good stories. I mean, I felt it was important for people to see the raw side of entrepreneurialism. And the raw side is that sometimes you take risks that you think are calculated risks, and they turn out to be not so calculated. That you didn't choose the right location, or you didn't choose the right team, or the thought wasn't completely vetted to the point where it needed to be. And you don't find that out until you get going. As I like to say, we're a society that believes in quantity, right? We can quantify things really easy. Anybody can get a calculator and quantify. But to determine from a thought bubble, like laying in bed or standing in a shower and having a thought, and having that thought start to take shape and start to evolve into a concept, is a very hard thing to do, because you start with a thought. It's like a book. You start with an introduction, but this book is 80,000 words. The introduction might be 1,000 words. The idea is just the germination, the beginning of the petri dish, and then you grow around it. But there's always going to be factors that come into play that you don't anticipate.
Obviously, one of your biggest accomplishments, and you talk about it a lot in your book, is expanding Payway into what it is today.
Correct.
Why did that become so successful? You know, you talk about some of the failures, but that really truly stands out as one of the success stories. And how did that come to be, in your opinion?
Well, to be very frank about it, I mean, we didn't create in a vacuum. We were the little brother of P.F. Chang's. Mm-hmm. And at the time, P.F. Chang's was the darling of the industry. It was back in the late 90s, where P.F. Chang's had 4 or 5 stores, and every one they opened up was setting records. I mean, there were lines around the block to get into a P.F. Chang's. And as Paul Fleming, who is the P.F. of P.F. Chang's, right? The 2 people that created P.F. Chang's were Paul Fleming, P.F., and Philip Chang. So they Philip P.F. Chang's.
And is Paul Fleming the Fleming's Steakhouse as well?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul had been into Tin Star, which I had opened at the Quadrangle. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't have any idea who Paul Fleming was. He loved Tin Star, went back to his friends at P.F. Chang's and said, I just ate in this place that was wonderful. It was small, it was casual, it was quick, it was good. We need to do something like this for P.F. Chang's, because at some point we're going to run out of big buildings to put P.F. Chang's in. Mm-hmm. And so they recruited me to come out and help them create a Tin Star-like concept for P.F. Chang's, and it turned out to be called Payway. But as we grew, to your point, Eric, we already had P.F. Chang's kind of pave the road. Mm-hmm. So when we went to a city, let's say Tulsa, just off the top of your head, you went to Utica Square in Tulsa, you couldn't get in the P.F. Chang's there. It was packed.
Wow.
Because it was a modern Chinese, it wasn't mom and pop. It had American touches. It had a full bar. And so
best lettuce wraps.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And so we would go into Tulsa with a Payway and say, hey, we're P.F. Chang's little brother.
We're P.F. Chang's Light and Express.
And we're the same company, and about half our items are the same, smaller portions, easier, quicker, faster, stronger, the whole bit. And we'd open up, we'd already have a kind of a built-in audience. So we were blessed in that we followed P.F. Chang's route of success around the country. We went to cities that P.F. Chang's had toured, like Dallas, for instance. Dallas at that time, when we brought Payway here, had 3 or 4 P.F. Chang's. The original one was up on the toll road by Frankfurt.
Oh, yeah.
And so we kind of clustered near those success stories and just kind of got on the bootstraps and followed their success along. Now, we created our own success because we became known as the cheaper version, but just as good as P.F. Chang's. So you could eat P.F. Chang's as an occasion. As I like to say, you eat every day. You only dine once in a while. Mm-hmm. Payway was the eat every day option.
Yeah.
P.F. Chang was to grab the group together, go wait an hour for a table, have a couple cocktails.
Yeah.
So as your success started building up with Payway, were all the landlords across the major cities chasing after you guys?
We were the belle of the ball.
That's awesome.
I could walk into a room with my broker, And I'm not bragging about this, but we get bumped to the front of the line, so to
Sure.
speak, right? It was like, hey, there's Payway here. Payway just became this name that just had this cachet to it because we were like a mini Anchor at 3,000 square feet. We were drawing anywhere from 800 to 1,200 people a day into a 3,000 square foot space. What landlord doesn't want 1,200 new people walking into their shopping center?
Right.
So we had the numbers, we had the strength of PF Chang's behind us, and we developed a really good team around it.
So during your career, and I think you saw the trend of Payway and the expansion there, and you've seen a lot of innovation within the restaurant industry along the way also. And then we had disruption from the pandemic within the restaurant industry, obviously. What kind of moment is this for the restaurant industry today?
It's a great question, Aarica. I think we tend to want to generalize, right? That's the other thing we tend to do. We want to quantify and we want to generalize. We want to group things and come up with some kind of analytics that say this is what this is. Dallas and Houston, and especially Texas during COVID, were some of the most forgiving places, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for
we were dining in restaurants without masks long before other states were even thinking about allowing people to open up. At the time, I was in charge of a company. I was CEO of Marigame Udon, and in California, if you tried to walk near our restaurant, you could get a ticket, right? In Texas, it was like, yeah, come on in. Do you have a mask? No, that's right. Go sit down, right? We were locked in California. We couldn't do anything in California, but in Texas, we were already starting to do business. So it's hard to generalize about the COVID business because that Texas was not as affected as other places, and it recovered much quicker because it's that type of environment. But in general, what COVID taught us all is that we had to be more available to be consumed more different ways than we had been.
So, Mark, another buzzword we've been hearing over the last several years has been the words food hall, okay, which you are very accustomed to knowing a lot about, which is it's a fast casual dining experience. You have firsthand knowledge of operating within a food hall,
so do.
and where it works and where it doesn't work. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it became like it blew up almost overnight, right? There was a couple that did really well, and frankly, I grew up in the East Coast. Food halls have been around a long time.
Yeah.
Chelsea Market, ferry terminal out in San Francisco. This wasn't a new thing. This was just a thing that people started paying more attention to because they're big spaces. You can put a lot of things in them, right? They were typically urban-related places where people lived vertically. They could come down their elevator, they could shop, they could take their bag up their elevator, and they could eat it right away. Doesn't really happen in suburban areas so much. Yeah. Food halls aren't meant to be destinations. It's not a...
Right.
Legacy Hall really changed the script on that here in Dallas. I mean, you park in a 7-story parking garage, you go up and down until you find a space, then you walk out and you go inside this massive food hall you try to figure out what to eat. It was a brand new thing. It worked at Legacy Hall because it was so novel, right? Like it was like,
and it's 50,000 square feet or something like that. So it's the
three
largest one by far anywhere around here.
Yeah, and so everybody sees one or two that work and say, oh, we can do that, right? Not so much. No, there's a lot behind the scenes that have to happen. Here we go back to the thought bubble, right? There's a lot of things you can look at and say that works, but to put it all together, to get the right formula, to get the right people managing it, to get the right people investing in it, it's a massive undertaking.
And the right experience, because you don't want a food hall turning into your mall food court, right?
No. And that's a great distinction too, because food halls can morph into food courts.
Yeah.
Food courts can't really morph into food halls because they're franchised. You're going to have Sbarro, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Burger King, whoever. That doesn't happen in food halls. Food halls are independently operated and run. But you could go to a mall and can easily transform a food court into a food mall, food hall. You can't do it quite the other way around. It's just a different mentality. Right?
So I totally get the point that in an urban location, a food hall that has a great concept is far more likely to be successful than in a suburban location, right? It's more walkable and accessible, and it just makes more sense. Now, there are a lot of companies and companies that we've done developments for, such as Toyota and JP Morgan Chase. And many of those companies have enough scale and mass to their workforce on site at their offices that it makes a lot of sense to have an integrated food hall or food court within their office campus. So how does a company that's looking to bring that sort of internal to their campus, how can they best position that to be successful and make sure that people want to come and enjoy that amenity?
So I've got a good story, if you don't mind me sharing it, because you guys know the name Sam Ware.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
When he bought the JCPenney campus, he called me up because back then JCPenney had thousands of employees. They had a food cafeteria. And the cafeteria on their ground level was beyond what you could ever imagine in your head in terms of amount of equipment, amount of outlets, places that you could eat. The employees just come downstairs. He asked me to help him transform it from like a cafeteria style to more of a food hall approach, because they had all the equipment, they had all the service counters, they could do different ethnic foods. They just needed a chef who understood enough of the different ethnics to be able to execute all the different. You had to have a burger station, you had to have a fried rice station, you had to have a carving station, you had to have a salad station, you had to have just good old sandwich board station. So I helped Sam transform their employee cafeteria at JCPenney into a food hall. We called it the Campus Food Hall. And it worked great. I've got pictures of it. It really worked well. Unfortunately, here we go again. JCPenney was going on the decline, and so they weren't doing the volume because there wasn't many people on the campus. Sam set out to try to fill the buildings with other people. But I think from a ground point standpoint, like you're talking about Toyota, if they bring in the right people initially to envision what will work and what's sustainable, and what can give the appeal to people that they don't have to leave the building for.
Right.
It's kind of come full circle back to that cafeteria approach.
And it's all about the experience too, right?
Yes.
So you're elevating that experience within these Class A mixed-use developments. You have to have where it feels like it's 5 different restaurants because it's 5 different types of cuisine, and you have different design elements, and it seems more like an upscale or trendy fast casual dining experience.
Exactly. And it's got to be smart. It's got to be intelligently designed behind the scenes. And getting back to Legacy Hall for a quick question, what I think Randy DeWitt and Jack Gibbons did that was genius, and I mean genius, was the entertainment part.
Oh, totally.
The beer garden part that said, okay, you're not just coming here to eat, you're coming here to be entertained. We're going to keep you here. The amount of functions that they did and the amount of different, the variety of things that they offered at different nights was just genius. And I think that helped a destination food hall survive, whereas some other ones around town didn't quite survive because they didn't have that entertainment element. And I think we talked about this at lunch the other day, is that it's imperative to keep people there for more than just that time that it takes to eat. And that element of entertainment is really, I think, an important part of the future of these developments.
We are working in Raleigh-Durham right now with the Research Triangle Foundation. We're working with them on a site called Hub RTP, Research Triangle Park. They have gone out of their way to develop a concept like what we're describing with this food hall. It's called the box yard, and it's so similar. It's like one of the only amenities in that area right now as it relates to great food options. But what they've done creatively, really similar to Randy DeWitt, is they've made it also an entertainment venue too, where they bring in some live music, and at certain days of the week it becomes standing room only at 5 o'clock. It's incredible. And what it's brought to that area, which is a bunch of suburban campuses spread around. I do think it is a great amenity when developed in the right way at the right place.
Yeah, It's not happenstance. I mean, I always said the best decisions are made with a combination of information and intuition. You got to have a feel for that. Randy and Jack have a great feel for the hospitality business and how it relates to entertainment, right? If you have that right team that understands that nature of how those two play off each other, it could be just like Legacy Hall. It could be a huge hit.
So one of the things that we get asked a lot about relative to our new office developments is what kind of deli or eatery are you guys offering to your tenants? And I don't know, Aarica, when we think about eateries and delis, coffee shops, just one thing that comes to mind is Eatsies, which you were a part of the expansion of.
Yes, I was.
And so having been such taken such a prominent role in the whole Eatsies development, what is some advice that you could offer different landlords as they have to create these type of concepts that are similar to that?
Yeah, again, it's the intelligence that goes into the planning of that, because Eatsies, the original idea of Eatsies was that it was a commissary-based market. You would build a big one with a big kitchen, and then you'd build outposts that were more like 7-Eleven, that you just drive a truck up and you fill up the shelves and then drive away. So a lot of these are commissary-based, because you have the variety of the food, to have the bakery and have the salad station, to have the hot food station, to have the focaccia station. That takes a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of food, right? A lot of product. But I'm of the opinion that you can create that internally and have it look like more and have that variety without it necessarily needing to be commissaried. It will take a substantial kitchen, but no bigger than a restaurant kitchen. And in fact, maybe even smaller than a restaurant kitchen. And then somebody who understands the nature of cross-utilization of items. I can rotisserie chicken. Sam and I talked about this up at JCPenney. You could do rotisserie chickens and turn rotisserie chicken into a million things. Chicken Caesar salad, chicken Caesar sandwiches, roasted chicken sandwiches, flatbreads. I mean, you can take a product and now offer a variety of platforms with a product that all it takes is a rotisserie in the back, right? Now you've got flatbreads, you've got sandwiches, you've got salads, you've got takeaway, you've got whole rotisserie at the end of the day. Stop by and pick up a chicken on your way home. Don't go to Boston Market.
I did that last night.
Right? So I think if you get in on the ground floor of these things and you work with somebody who understands the nature of operating a smaller kitchen but having a broader platform, it's not as hard as it seems. It just depends upon who's doing it, because again, collaborations are the best when you've got all the different disciplines there. I'm very disciplined when it comes to size. Like, okay, I got to work within this amount of budget, this amount of equipment, this amount of space, but I've got to appeal to 1,200 people a day. So how do I do that?
So Mark, that brings us back to, we've got, call it a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot space to build this concept within. I'm a developer. Where do I start? Who do I go to?
Well,
to Mark.
Well, I'm leading you to that.
It's a loaded question. No, obviously I love doing that. I mean, this is my lifestyle. I've done nothing else for 45 years of my life except for study food and create food and help people create concepts. I worked for Yum Brands, as you know, the largest restaurant company in the world, helped create Super Chicks and Bond Shop for Yum Brands. But then I've helped mom and pops open their first restaurant. So I love doing that part of the process. I like to absorb as much information as people give me. Say, here's what we want. Then I listen and I say, okay, I start going through my head. I always say the mind is like this carousel that's spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden it stops and you go, okay, this looks like that thing I did over there, or this looks like that thing I visited in Taiwan, or this looks like that thing I went in London on Soho. You start picking those together and you start piecing it together based on what you're hearing from your client. For some reason in my lifetime, I've had that ability to listen to what people want and help them get what they need, not just what I think they should have. Because there are a lot of consultants that will come in and just like, okay, here's what we do. We'll give you this. But they don't necessarily pay as much attention to what where they are, what that market is, how many people are in that tower, what type of people they are. So that's what kind of I do.
You're the idea and implementation guy.
Yeah, and I can do it. I honestly can do it from soup to nuts. I mean, I can do it from it doesn't exist to there is something that exists that we can do a little something like that if you want, or we can create a kind of a new. Christoph Yum, it's a quote in my book, says Mark can create a new blue ocean. I don't like to recreate what somebody else has done and kind of remodel it. I like to just say let's create something unique, but it doesn't have to be so unique that nobody understands it.
Right.
It has to be understandable. So yes, that's what I like to do, Aarica. I like to work with people. They tell me what they want, and
I'm going to shift to one of our fun segments of this episode and talk about your experience with food. You've literally eaten at restaurants all over the world.
Yes, I have.
All types of cuisine. Do you have a favorite cuisine?
I think we talked about. I love Asian food. I love the versatility. I love the simplicity of it sometimes, and the variety of things you can put together to make different flavors. Yes, I lean towards all types of Asian though.
All types, Indian, Chinese.
Yeah. People forget that India is the second largest country in Asia, right? I mean, Russia.
Did you know that,
Let's not
Aarica?
go down that path.
Shut up.
But yeah, China and India, right? But we associated growing up, we called it Oriental food.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And everything just got grouped into Oriental food. But now kids know the difference between Korean barbecue and Vietnamese pho and Thai coconut curries and Indian curries and sushis and teriyakis. So now people are exposed to. I was blessed to be able to travel through the Far East and through China quite a bit. So I know the difference between the provinces of China and how different they are from Vietnamese food, which is a coastal and uses so many more fresh coastal ingredients. But I'm always drawn to Asian, and you and I still owe each other lunch at.
Yes. Where's your favorite lunch spot, or where's your favorite dinner spot here in Dallas?
Well, I live near Royal China.
Oh, yeah.
And George is a dear friend of mine. So a little bit convenience there because it's in my neighborhood. But I like to go up to Chinatown. I mean.
Oh, my gosh. Eric has a new best friend.
Yes, Mark is my new best friend.
Let's go.
We can go anytime.
Let's go
anytime.
Have some dumplings.
Literally, Eric's there 4 times a week. Anytime.
But to be fair, I lean towards Asian food. But I love all foods. I mean, I'm Italian, Southwestern food was a kind of a obsession of mine for a while. I've always enjoyed different ethnics. You put it in front of me, I'm going to try it. I may not go back to it time and time again. There may be something about it that doesn't hit my palate right. But it seems like I can always walk into an Asian restaurant and find something to eat.
Thai curry or Indian curry?
Indian curries are pretty spicy to me.
Okay.
Thai curries can be a little sweeter.
Sweeter, yeah.
Right?
The coconut milk.
But when I did my Indian restaurant, Bengal Coast, what an Indian chef thought was spicy and what I thought was spicy were different planets.
Oh, wow.
We were orbiting different suns.
Yeah.
I mean, I was saying, boy, that's a 10. And they go, I wouldn't serve that to my parents. They wouldn't eat it.
Well, it looks like we're both speaking your love language. So I'm going to ask one. I'm going to battle y'all against each other really quick. If you're at home and you're cooking for a few people to come over, what is your go-to dish that you're cooking? Don't ask me because I don't have one. That's why I'm asking you. What is your go-to dish that you cook at home?
I'll let you go first.
Mine's pasta.
It is pasta.
Yep. Yeah. Anything red sauce pasta. What about yours, Mark?
So this is interesting, right? Because his is pasta.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about Asian food.
Yeah.
Asian food. Mine's lasagna.
Okay.
My
gosh.
We were long lost,
If you're coming over to
brothers.
my house, I am going to spend all day making my gravy.
Really?
Making my meat sauce. I'm going to buy fresh mozzarella. I'm going to buy fresh lasagna noodles. And there are people in the room here that are smiling that know that about me. But my lasagna is if you were on Beat Bobby Flay and you had time, I'd try to beat Bobby Flay with lasagna.
All right.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to try it one day.
But if we're going out to eat, dumplings. I want some soup dumplings. I want some noodles.
Yes.
I want some, kind of stick to the rib kind of.
Well, Mark, it was a real pleasure visiting with you today. I learned a lot. I'm pretty positive Aarica did as well.
For sure.
And you were so kind to take our out of the blue request to meet and talk with you. And we certainly see the tangential traits of what you've done in your career to what we do in the commercial real estate side. So we just want to thank you for your generous time today.
I'm thrilled to talk about it. As you can see, I don't need a lot of provocation to tell stories. So that's what the book was all about. Give me an opportunity to share more about the food business with people.
Well, and everyone go pick up a copy of ForkFight. It was extremely interesting.
Great book.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to Credible Talk. We will see you next time.